So, you may have recognized from past videos that I've got a bit of an obsession with Cyberpunk. Um, so that is going to be the topic of today's game and video. About 10 years ago, I entered the Cyberpunk Revival contest with this game, Metropole Luxury Coffin, and it actually won the contest. And now I'm redesigning it. It was inspired by a quote, which I will read out to you now, which is taken from Transmetropolitan by Warren Ellis. It says, there's a jungle rhythm beating out below me, the sound of truncheons hammering on riot shields, a police tradition when the streets get nasty. I'm an Angel's 8, above what will doubtless be called the Transient Riot. History is only written by the winners, after all. And if the cops want it called the Transient Riot, that's how it'll be. Because there's going to be transient blood all over this place, and you know something? It's not their fault. Transients couldn't have managed this on their own. They're just big kids who thought it'd be fun to live inside an alien body. A sane society would have tagged them for the waterheads they are and bought them a big playground. But no one even checked to see if their silly claim for secession was feasible. Civic Center just decided to stamp on them instead. It goes on from there, but it's that sense of the little guy mattering is what really inspired it. And in addition, this book, Over the Edge, quasi-cyberpunk book, which is set in a city block. It's a remarkably well-detailed city block, but it's a city block. So unlike most places, that's very well written. So, Metropole Luxury Coffin. It is set in a capsule hotel, which has been mistranslated to be a coffin hotel. It is, called the Metropole Luxury Coffin, and over 1,000 people live there. And if you can imagine, that makes for a very noisy environment. Because, every culture imaginable, and a few that we haven't imagined yet. So, these people are usually the victims in most cyberpunk games. Not the people being shot at, but the bystanders who got caught in the crossfire. And they're generally disregarded by most cyberpunk games. So, their lives are the focus of this game. They have a sense of fashion, because the game is based around fashion. The game is also based around social groups, which are called brand tribes. Think of a car fan group, except the people here can't actually afford cars, so they revolve around other brands. And those are called B tribes. So it satirizes consumerism in a world that doesn't have enough space in which to put stuff. And it is simulationism masquerading as gamism, which I'll cover in another video. The desire to create 2.0, and first version had you spent minutes as currency. So the cell phones ran the company, bought the banks, and now they were running things. So the desire to make 2.0 into a more extreme version of the original game resulted in various things occurring. First of all, it's debts and age. The older you are, the more you know, but the more you owe. So characters have to pay back debts, they have to pay back groceries, they have to pay rent, they have to pay all these things in gigacups now, because the caffeine companies, or the Starbucks-esque companies, bought out the banks, or bought out the cell phone companies. And it's combined with you are constantly online in this setting, so that reduces the amount of player downtime, is constantly streaming both your vision and sound, what you see and hear. So this game, as with the original, uses cards rather than dice, because even though it's powered by the apocalypse and is inspired heavily by this game and will use the logo of powered by the apocalypse, I just decided to do something different with the rules. It does use the apocalypse world setting, or suggestion, so that's why I get the idea of powered by the apocalypse. But yeah, it uses the 2 to 10 cards as numbers for resolving moves, but I decided to set aside the aces, faces, and jokers for what I call butt cards, pun intended. Butt card allows you to modify a successful move to include some other story element, or basically ruin it for the player, or creditor, NPC. And the reason why I've decided to do that is that, and the butt cards also are connected to sickness, so that you don't sit on them too long. It's that you slowly, as you accumulate butt cards, they slowly build up your penalties. And that really keeps the game moving. Speaking of moving, there's another thing that keeps it moving. Real time. Oh yes. This game has a lot of mechanics, or a few mechanics, that are judged in real time. So that includes debts, drugs, drug side effects, medications, medication side effects. And it's just to keep it bouncing along, keep them from spending too much time planning. Otherwise your debt spirals out of control if you haven't paid it already. Yes, this takes the idea of powerful ambition and poor impulse control found in Fiasco, and merges it with a customized setting, as opposed to having to ask you to watch other films or read other books. The game itself is going to be produced in 2 zines. So a zine, at least as I envision it, is usually about the size of half a sheet of paper, but it's got several pages. And there will be 2 zines, because one is for the players and the other is for the game master. In addition, I plan on producing expansions on this game, detailing things like where you go next, or vendors outside, or malls, or other places like that. In addition, there is going to be other games like Lost Golems will track the homeless and start using drawing mechanics and things like that, as in drawing on a piece of paper. The Bot Justice will use a mechanic wherein you have to justify everything you do to an AI that watches over you. And finally, I want to end off this series with a expansion that actually goes into that second part of the plot, which is changing the world. Because cyberpunk, I think, is the most relevant of all the genres right now, considering how much civil unrest, people are getting uppity over prejudice, defund the police, and corporate powerhouses control the politicians. I know that's not exactly 100% true, but yeah, it's generally true. So, anyways, I sort of ended on a down note like that, but have yourself a great day and Dewey.